need to be able to hear this. Okay, let's try this again, shall we? Hold on just a moment. Sorry, you guys. I don't want any of my students that couldn't be here to miss this part. Okay. As a mother to 3 children, Megan Buer struggled for years with Hashimoto's disease, adrenal fatigue, sugar addiction, food intolerances, panic, and anxiety. She went on a journey of health and discovery, spending over 10 years researching, boy, can I relate to that, experimenting, and finally figuring out all of the unique tools she needed to naturally heal herself. Megan shares her knowledge and healing gifts in private practice and online, and is a certified emotion code practitioner. I want to dig into that one for sure. Reiki healer, wellness coach, author, and blogger. Megan's mission is to take the fear and overwhelm out of health. She is passionate about simplifying your healing journey, empowering you with the tools needed for health, and to get you thriving again. Megan works with clients remotely full-time, educates, speaks, and writes, and is also a part of the health team at Revolution Health Center in Virginia. So welcome, Megan. I was telling you, I have been waiting for this. I think this is just such a huge piece that's missing from working with our clients, and you're just a great resource, and I love your website's beautiful. I get on there and I just feel like an overwhelming sense of calm when I get on your website. I really do.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So we have a lot in common as far as the Hashimoto's and the overwhelm and the adrenal fatigue. Also the 10 years of experimenting and searching. And I know from reading your story that I can really relate to being completely sick and tired of trying to find out what works, what doesn't, and being offered the next best thing. The next best thing is going to take me to the next place, right? So I want you to give just a little bit more about your story, and then I want you to lead into like enough is enough. Like the day you went, I'm done. This is too much. I'm done. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yes, I love telling this story, and people usually like hearing it too. So I'll start. It was 9 years ago, and it was Halloween night. This was my rock bottom moment. I'd been struggling with my health for a little while, but really was not alternative at that point. Was just kind of looking into mainstream things, and it was really just anxiety. It wasn't like a ton of my other symptoms weren't there, but it was 9 years ago. It was Halloween night. I was 8 months pregnant. I had a 2-year-old son. We were all asleep, and then I woke up just having this panic attack, and this was like off the charts type of panic, like just completely ridiculous. And I woke up my husband, and I told him to go get our son because I thought I was dying. And I needed to say goodbye. This was it. It's over. Obviously I didn't die, but we went to the emergency room that night, and they gave me, saline solution, like IV, salt water solution, and gave my husband the number to a suicide hotline and told us it was all in my head.
Oh my gosh.
So at that point, that's when everything switched for me, when I realized, like, okay, I have a life, I have kids, like this cannot be my life. And so I started down this journey through alternative health. And that was this point where I realized Western medicine isn't going to do anything for me. And I need to start looking elsewhere. So then I start down this journey of, the alternative health rabbit hole, and, and it was diets and exercise and supplements and, herbs and homeopathy and doing all these different things. And I kept getting sicker. And it was so frustrating because I felt like I was doing everything I was supposed to be doing. Like everything was perfect. My diet was great, all these expensive supplements, and I just kept hitting these walls. And I got more stressed, I got more exhausted, and I throughout these years of trying to get better, I finally got this diagnosis of autoimmune disease. And it was like, what the heck is going on? I've been doing everything right, and I'm just getting sicker by the day. I would just wake up in the morning and feel like, what is it today? What's going to happen today?
Yes.
And so that was kind of the backstory. And then I started doing the emotion code, and I was working with a practitioner, and it was this emotional stress because I started finally healing. And it was like, I kept trying to heal my physical symptoms with very physical things, with food and diet and exercise. And I kept hearing things in the alternative health world about, the power of your thoughts and affirmations and stress. And I was like, I just don't have time for that. Like, that
Oh
sounds
my
really
gosh,
great.
yes.
It's something I'll do when I get better, but like, I've got things I need to deal with first. But I finally did. I got to this point where I was so sick and so broken open that I was open for anything, and I started doing this energy work, and I didn't understand it, and it was weird. And I started healing very quickly, and my symptoms just started like disappearing. And it was like, okay, like, I'm totally in, this is amazing. And I would say I got about 75% of the way back. Most of my symptoms were gone, but there was still this chunk that I knew something else needed to change, and I wasn't sure what it was. And because I would feel better for a few weeks, and then I would start to dip back, and it was like this up and down thing. And I had this moment, it was this light bulb moment, where I'm sitting on the back porch, and I remember it like it was yesterday, because it was just one of those moments that like never the same. And I'm sitting there, my husband's working in the yard, my kids are playing, and I'm like reading a diet book or something, like, of course, just trying to figure out what's wrong with me, what diet is going to fix this. And I'm thinking, okay, why can't I just get better? Like, what is holding me back? And I had this realization that the thing that was holding me back, the reason why I couldn't get better, was because I believed I was sick. Like, I believed on this really deep core level that there was something wrong with me.
Yes.
And the reason why I couldn't get well was because I believed I wasn't well.
Yes.
And it was just like this light bulb. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's like, this is why I'm sitting here. Rather than being present in my life and out playing with my kids in the yard, I'm reading a diet book.
Yes.
Like, I'm treating myself like a sick person. And so from that day forward, I decided I wasn't sick anymore. And I started eating and breathing and living like I wasn't a sick person. And that action created the result. And I'm to that point now where I have no symptoms. I don't have anxiety anymore. My blood work is normal. Within 3 months, my blood work was normal from that day on the back porch. And that was it. That was the last piece for me, was making the decision to be a healthy person.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
I resonate with so much of your story. I mean, the first time I ever had a panic anxiety attack, I was working 70 hours a week. I was managing a restaurant, and I was shopping with my friend, and she dropped me off at home. I was also smoking 2 packs a day. I was partying until 5, 6 in the morning, and then going to work at 12 and working till 2 o'clock.
Oh,
and I was sitting on the couch from shopping, having a great day. And all of a sudden I felt like I was dying. I felt like I was in a tunnel, and I was like, I called my roommate and I said, I'm pretty sure that I'm dying right now. So I'm going to go take a shower so I'm clean when they come to get the body, is basically what I felt. Right. I thought, there's no excuse. There's no explanation for how I felt. I remembered that feeling so vividly when you were just talking. I'm like, I feel that all over again, just because I remember. Right. Mm-hmm. The only thing like that even remotely calmed me down, they took me to the hospital in an ambulance. Okay. And this is in the 90s, early 90s, I think. Yeah, like 92, 93. I'm 45 now. So anyway, I was young. But and I remember getting in there, and they gave me the saline, and they said, yeah, Miss Peterson, that was my name at the time, you're having a panic attack. And I said, I'm pretty sure that's not it, and I'm not leaving till you make sure you diagnose me with something. This can't just be anxiety, right? Yeah. And so anyway, fast forward that night, I was still in that fogginess that goes through you, the cortisol release and all of that fear. And a guy I was dating at the time brought a joint over and said, you're just having a panic attack. You just need to get high. And I was like, okay. I mean, it was literally the only thing that made me calm down. Yeah. I couldn't believe it. But but knowing that feeling, I don't smoke pot anymore. That was 25 years ago. But, knowing that you're that desperate to feel like you can get some control of how you're feeling inside, that you're willing to have your husband take you to the hospital, you're willing to do whatever it takes, is a scary feeling. And many times our clients are dealing with these things. Mm-hmm. Like this is something that is underlying the bigger, like they think it's the bigger picture or the physical symptoms. But honestly, many times, don't you find that the anxiety is creating the physical symptom?
Yeah. I mean, that's what I notice, because people ask me all the time, well, what kind of clients do you see? And I'm like, I see everything from cancer to a runny nose. But the interesting thing is that underneath everybody is anxiety. Like I go through the intake forms and we'll talk, and it's like they go through this laundry list of things that they want to fix. And then it's like, oh yeah, and I've got anxiety.
Yes.
And I'm
like
like,
it's secondary.
yeah. And I'm like, I want you to realize how important that is, that stress, that emotional stress is a huge creator of everything else. Like it's not just and your anxiety. Like, let's go there. It's the emotional stress that you're holding on to, and how much that does really create our physical symptoms. And that's just not really talked about in alternative health. And for me, and most of my clients, that is the last missing piece. And like, again, it's very holistic. You can't do all the emotional work and to have a crappy diet and expect, everything to just function properly. But you can't just have a perfect diet and then have all this stress and emotional stuff going on and expect like everything to just magically be better,
I know. It's like the magic pill. It's like when someone gets heartburn and they're like, well, I don't want to have to take out gluten and all those foods that are causing my problem. I want to take a pill. So yeah, and there's nothing easy about emotional work. I got my first You Can Heal Your Life book when I was a teenager. My mom gave it to me and I still have it. And I was like, oh, hocus pocus, give me another cigarette. I'm like, whatever. And I've moved probably 16 times. I was quite the gypsy in college. And I've carried that book, and every single time I've packed that book, I have looked at it, opened it, read her message in there, and thought, someday this is going to serve me. Every single time. So I'm going to take this book. I never gave that book away. Out of all the books and things I've given away in my life, that one stayed with me for a reason, I think. But don't you think that it's interesting how we think that the body and the mind are so separate?
Right.
Like they don't work together. Like whatever we think doesn't affect how we feel, because the head is floating over here and the body is over here, right? So talk to me a little bit about the emotion code and how, first tell, some people don't know what that is. They're not familiar with it. So talk a little bit about what it is, and then how it can resolve problems based on, like your experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, just to backtrack just a tiny bit, how you're saying we feel like it's all disconnected. I was teaching a class the other night about anxiety, and I just said, this person asked, she said, well, I've talked to all these doctors and they just tell me, you just got to buck up. Like, this is just how your life is going to be. You got to suck it up. And she's like, so what do you do? Like, do you really believe that you can like heal from this and like that you don't have to be stuck? And I was like, yeah, like, didn't you hear anything I just said?
Did you not hear my story?
Like, yes, and I said, if you are feeling that stuck, like if you've tried everything and you still feel so stuck, I said, first thing you need to do is look at your thoughts. Because if you are sitting around thinking, oh my gosh, my life sucks, this anxiety is the worst, like I'm not getting anything done I want to, then like that makes you feel like crap, right? Like those thoughts make you feel like crap. And when you feel like crap, your life is crap. And vice versa, if you are thinking, my gosh, I'm such a rock star, like I have so much to live for, this life is amazing, I'm so grateful for this, you start to feel better. And when you feel better, everything in your life starts to get better. And so that's where, these clients of mine, even if we are doing the emotion code, we're doing all that, if they're walking around with like negative thinking all the time, that like I can't change that. They have to just do that for themselves, but it's really just about helping them become aware of it. Like we just do that. We naturally just focus on the negative, unfortunately. And it just takes that little bit of jolt of awareness to be like, whoa, like I'm like thinking such horrible things about myself,
Yeah.
Have to switch it. And that's how we get unstuck.
Yeah.
But the emotion code, so the emotion code is a form of energy healing. There's lots of different modalities. It's one specific modality. So some of the other ones people might have heard of are like EFT tapping, Reiki, there's lots of different ways of shifting energy. Emotion code is just what worked for me. So that's what I practice now because it was so beneficial. But it's basically a way to specifically release emotional stress from the body. So these triggers, trapped emotions from the body so that it can function the way that it needs to. So trapped emotions are just the old, residual energy from past experiences. So I'll tell the story, like for me, when I was sick and having all this anxiety and panic, the grocery store was this huge trigger for me. And every time I would walk into a grocery store, I would just start panicking.
I remember reading that.
It wasn't that I was unsafe. I was fine. So it's those experiences when you're getting triggered, but like, you shouldn't be. It's like, I'm standing in the grocery store and I'm okay. There's nothing bad happening. I'm safe. Why am I feeling panicked? It's because this old thing is getting triggered.
Programming.
Old subconscious experience, or like, with your kids, like if you're getting really overwhelmed and it's like, why? What's going on? There's nothing going on. I don't need to be stressed out. It's probably some old thing getting triggered. So that's what the emotion code does, is it takes neutralizes all those triggers so you can be present in your life. So I see clients, again, cancer to a runny nose, to pain, physical pain, emotional pain. It's getting to the root of the stress that's causing the physical and emotional pain. So
right. And do you find that, and because this is something that I have found, working with clients, over 6 years, I've run into, there's always something going on emotionally for everyone. No one is perfectly walking through this world without any history or baggage in their backpack. And many times I've had clients say, but how do you stop it? Like, how do you stop it? I said, well, the very first step, in my opinion, you tell me what you think, is to be aware that you're thinking it. Mm-hmm. Be aware of the fact that thought is there. And if that means, for me, it means stopping in my moment, in my day, whatever I'm doing. I do belly breathing, and was just telling my kid this morning. I was just teaching him, reminding him to do that when we're traveling and we're feeling stressed or whatever. But I stop, do like 3 breaths, and I say, whatever it is I'm doing, standing here, outside, brushing my teeth, whatever it is to bring me back to that moment. And I said, but it's something that you have to be creating awareness around for yourself. Is that kind of what you think too?
Yeah, and that's the thing, especially with the emotional stuff, is we just don't have the tools. I don't think in 4 years, I don't think I've ever come across one client who was ever taught as a child how to deal with their emotions.
Yes.
None of us.
No.
And it's not because our parents had bad intentions. It's because they didn't know how. And
yes.
down and down and down the line, I'm sure. And, I tell people, it's like when you were a kid, and if you have kids, this feeling, they trigger you. They push your buttons so deeply. Okay. So if your kid is having this big emotion, if you were a little kid and you're there and you were really upset about something, well, maybe that triggered something really deeply in mom or dad. And mom or dad didn't know how to deal with that. So what they did is they threw Cheerios at you. They put you in front of the TV. They distracted you somehow away from that emotional experience because they didn't know how to handle it.
Right.
So that's how you learned how to handle your emotions, was through distraction. Mm-hmm. We were never told our emotions were okay. We were never told they were safe and normal. We were just distracted away from them. And so we started to internalize, like, well, this must not be good. This is bad. So I don't want to feel this. So now what do we do as adults? Something comes up, we open Facebook, we turn on TV, we shop, we eat, we
numb, don't we?
Yeah, we totally numb out we do exactly what we were taught in childhood. We're just not eating Cheerios anymore. And so, so that's the biggest thing, is teaching people, one, your emotions are okay, that it's fine to feel the way you do. It's okay. It's safe. And then giving them the tools to actually handle things as they come up, and so EFT is a really great way to do that. I have a lot of training things on my blog that people can, go to and see videos that they can go do with me. But, I tell people the 3 things you need to do are acknowledge, validate, and release. And so the way we have to acknowledge what we're feeling. So if somebody's feeling, if a client is feeling really stressed out about, I don't know, her husband or something, then I just remind her that it's okay to feel that way, and that she needs to remind herself that it's okay. So when something comes up during the day, just take a second, literally 10 to 20 seconds, and just say, hey, Megan, I see that you're feeling really frustrated right now about X, Y, or Z, and that's okay. And energetically, just doing that, just that very simple 5 seconds, energetically, that will help to start release that emotion from your body. Because when we feel things and we just think, oh my gosh, that's so uncomfortable, I just want to get rid of it, I don't want to deal with it, that's when they become these trapped emotions and they start to cause physical health issues.
Right.
So as we just acknowledge, we validate, we release, it moves that energy out of the body, and that energy can go to healing the physical body rather than just trying to suppress emotions. So
right. So it's like what we resist persists. Like if you keep pushing against it, it's going to get bigger and bigger, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I was working with someone one time, and they were like, have you ever gone back into your childhood to try to, figure out where this emotion is coming from? And I'm like, well, why would I want to do that? And I actually heard a comedian was talking about that, like how, therapists are always trying to bring up your repressed emotions. And he was making a joke about it. He goes, that's the body's way of keeping us from seeing the nightmares, people. I mean, why would you want to pull the box out and open it up? And then you're like, there's a bunch of things in there I don't want to remember, right? And it's because it makes us feel sick. And I remember that process of walking up, finding myself at 6 years old, sitting in a field where I used to play kickball when I was little, like 6, 7 years old, right? And I was a very unhappy child in that process, like in that image of me walking up to that child. And all I did in that process was to say, it's okay. It's all going to be okay, because, you're going to be a grown up someday, and none of this really matters. You're going to move through this perfectly, and life will be good, and it was so powerful to me it was almost like a heaviness left. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
And, and that's the beauty of the emotion code. And that's why I like it so much, is that we don't have to psychoanalyze, because people really are afraid of their emotions. They're afraid of stretching that stuff up. They don't want to go there. And that's the beauty of this. I tell people, this is not therapy. This is not where we have to sit around and talk about how you're feeling and try to figure this all out. This is all subconscious work. So we're just clearing stuff. You don't even have to be aware of what's going on. We don't have to talk about this. So it's actually a really big relief for people if they've been in therapy for years. I have one client, she was one of my first clients years ago, and she was like, I've been in therapy for 10 years. And I swear I feel better in 6 months, working with you than I had in therapy, because all I did was talk about it, and it just got triggered, and I just felt more upset. Nothing was ever resolved. And so it's not about this, exhausting, emotional journey. It's just about, releasing things subconsciously, and helping the person just move on with their life. So there is the emotional piece, but then there's really also this piece of the mindset and the decision to just change, and how powerful that is too. And so when I see those two things combined, that's when things really start getting moving for my clients.
Yeah.
Release and then change your mind.
Yeah. And sometimes I think, it's a comfort thing for a lot of people. They're very comfortable being unhappy. What would happen if they entered a world where they didn't have to worry?
Right.
They don't know. So it's more comfortable to stay in that unhappy place, right? Because we know what to expect. It's predictable. Yeah. So tell me about, do you know anything about brain spotting? That's something that I've tried. Have you tried brain spotting?
I haven't. No.
Okay. So that's it. Have you heard of it?
No.
Okay. Well, it's coming up on the treatment, like EMDR is now making its way mainstream. Well, brain spotting is on the tail of EMDR.
Okay.
It's very cool, but it's very similar to that. I recommend it to some clients who just are not seeing results with EMDR, and they just can't, Reiki's nothing's working. I'm like, well, there's this new thing. And it basically is interesting. I'll give you a little demo. Okay.
Yeah.
So basically the person that you're working with, the therapist, has can you see my red pen?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So they bring the emotion into your mind, into your body. They talk about feeling that emotion, how you feel it the most, all of that. And then they move that point that your eyes track the point. Mm-hmm. And there is a point, and I cannot explain it, but it happens, of where you're just watching that movement of that item, and the emotion gets stronger. Mm-hmm. So your brain, there's a place in your brain that hits history. Something there historically is the strong place, and it's triggering you super heavy wherever that lands. And that's where they keep you, and they hold you there until you can come out of that emotion in a healthy way.
Yeah.
And it disappears.
Yeah. That's
crazy.
Amazing.
But I was like, what? I mean, when I got done with that, I was like, okay, I'm coming back. I want more of that. Right. So I think there are different modalities for people, but I think, the emotion code just seems like a very simplified process, right?
It's really simple. You can technically learn how to do some of it on your own. There's a book called The Emotion Code by Dr. Bradley Nelson. So you can learn some of the basics. So I like to tell my clients, try, like, read the book, try to do some of this on your own. I was not ready to do it on my own. I just wanted somebody to help me at that point, and that was fine. I worked with my practitioner for several months, and but it's just for the people that maybe have a lot of stuff and don't want to talk about it, don't want to like go into it in that sense, don't want to refeel things, like it's a great modality. And I tell people, like, the emotion code is when you're really digging into that old subconscious stuff. Things like EFT, that's a great everyday upkeep type of tool, because what EFT does is it really combines modern psychology with the ancient energy healing techniques, where what you're doing is you're acknowledging and validating how you feel, but you're also releasing it on the energetic level. And so it's a great way to just, hey, I'm all this anxiety I'm feeling all this, and you just start tapping and narrating how you feel. You'll start to feel that shift. It'll just kind of go away. So that's a great, I tell people EFT isn't great for like digging into old past stuff. I haven't seen, but it's great for that kind of everyday when stresses come up, you just deal with it and you move on, so you don't get stuck all the time.
Yeah, almost like it's that first step of acknowledgement. Except you're not acknowledging an old past hurt or trauma or problem. You're acknowledging that in the moment I'm feeling this way. And so maybe it's more preventative, so that in 10 years from now, you're not tapping away that anger you feel at your husband for doing something wrong or whatever it may be.
Exactly.
Like a preventative technique. That's very cool.
Totally preventive, so that you're not getting all these trapped emotions and stuff that's going to turn into physical pain later. It's just getting rid of it, moving it so that you can be functioning at a high level all the time.
Right. So let's talk about this from let's go into the health coach perspective and what this might look like when it comes to our clients that we're working with. So I teach my students to, work on the 5 foundations of health that all human beings need. One reason I don't believe we have to have a niche to help people, that may come to you later on. But, if somebody has a heartbeat, they're a client, because we all need those 5 things, right? We need sleep, we need safe movement, we need to work on our perception of stress, we need good food, and we need fun in our lives. And so I feel like once you kind of start tapping into those 5 things, it's like a checklist. Okay, the client's sleeping better, they've gotten off gluten toxic foods, they've cleaned out their makeup, they're having more fun with their family, and they're changing their perception of stress, but they're still not quite where they want to be. What do I do now? Like, sometimes coaches are like, I've done everything I know to do. And so my piece of that is, what happened to them as a child? What was their life like coming to this moment of being with you? Is there a way that you can, without knowing the emotion code right off the bat, right? Is there a way that I do a timeline. I take people back through a timeline. When do you remember this, this, this? But what do you do to approach that type of thing when everything else has been touched on and done? A coach still needs that tool. So what tool is that for you?
Well, one thing that I will do when I want to try to get one of my clients talking, I mean, granted, they're coming to me with the emotional stuff already, so it's easier for me to know that's what we're digging into. But something you can ask is, like, when did this start? Like, what was going on in your life when all these symptoms started? And I would say most of the time, they're going to start telling you an emotional story. They're going to start telling you about some stress in their life that happened, because people will say, this happened and then I was never the same. Ever since I had my baby, or ever since my divorce, or ever since this move, or my parents got divorced, or my dad died, or whatever, ever since this, I've never been the same. And so you go back to that. And then if it is something like that, if it's like a divorce or a death or a birth of a kid or whatever, there's probably some sort of emotional underlying stress that's getting triggered, that got triggered, which caused the symptoms and is still in this state of trigger. So that's when you realize, all right, some sort of emotional work needs to be done. Because I would say 10 times out of 10, there's always, it's an event in their life. It's an illness or something, but there's an emotion tied into that. Like, everything we do, there's an emotion. So even if it's, ever since I got mono, or ever since, whatever, there's an emotion tied to that always. Like, I've never seen somebody who was like, well, you've got nothing going on, you're just good to go. So there's like, there's always an emotional aspect, so so that's, that, but then also, it's really, you get to this point, and I see this with my clients where they've done the healing, like they've been through the system, they've done it all, and it's like, it's down to their decision. Like I have this one client right now, and I'm in this process of trying to coach her through like feeling confident enough to decide that she's okay and that she can move on with her life and she doesn't have to be sick anymore. And, you know, I think for people that are on these health journeys, we get so like, it becomes our identity, unfortunately.
Yes.
And so a lot of times it's really about rebirth, like birthing something new, like birthing this new life of like, I'm not going to be sick anymore. And so what do I do now? Like, and it is kind of scary. It's that same thing if we just kind of stay stuck in complaining and this low level stuff because it's comfortable. And so realizing, you know what, this person does have everything in place. They're having fun. They're sleeping good. Their diet's great. They've done the emotional work. Like, they need to decide something different. And it's about just rewriting your story, getting in there and deciding like, this is what I want to do with my life and I'm not going to be sick anymore. And so just taking that empowered approach instead of always just feeling like, okay, like maybe I'm not sick today, but what if something happens tomorrow, you know? And so if you have to believe that you're better and start living your life that way, it's taking that action, you know?
Yeah.
Because I know for me, like going back to that day where I had that moment where I realized, I that's why I wasn't well, was because I believed I wasn't well. Well, I could sit around and like think affirmations all day, but if I wasn't taking action, I really wouldn't have made the progress, you know. And I actually have this picture. It was just a couple days after this moment, and it was the last day of school, and my husband wanted to go out to a restaurant to celebrate the last day of school with my kids. And I was like, oh, heck no. Like, you know, I hadn't been to a restaurant in years because, you know, soy oil and what if I had gluten? And, you know, I was terrified of like poisoning myself. And he's like, well, what would, you know, why don't we just go out to dinner and celebrate? And immediately I was like, oh, no, you know, like I can't do that.
Let me get my lunch sack while you eat.
It's like, I'll pack my food, you know, but then I was like, no, what would a person who thinks there's nothing wrong with them do?
Yes.
Go out to dinner and enjoy their family and move on with their life. Like, yes. And that's where I realized, all right, I have to stop spending my Saturdays researching health topics and go enjoy my kids. Like, and so it is about making that mindset shift and taking action, like starting to act and think and eat and believe that you're a healthy person and that you're living for something else, not just for being sick, you know?
Yes. It's like again, I mean, like everything you're saying is just hitting everything for me. I truly, so I have a person that on Facebook who started following me because I share tips on food and all that. Cause I was only health coaching for so many years. I wasn't teaching coaches until about 3.5 years ago. And every time she would post something, it would start with, well, you all know I have fibromyalgia. Mm-hmm. Well, you all know that I have chronic fatigue. It was always her description of herself was the disease.
Yeah.
And so one day I just couldn't stand it anymore. So like it was before that unfollow button, that magic button that came to my attention. Like, oh, I could just stop seeing this, right? And I said, what if you just decided that you aren't going to be sick anymore? Mm-hmm. Like, how about that? You don't understand. I'm like, I was diagnosed with like 12 different diseases and I didn't have any of them. So I kind of get it, but I just couldn't even, like, that's what I'm saying. So, and I caught myself though, because I also think that something that triggers us about someone else can be something that's true for us. Mm-hmm. And it triggered me so badly because I started paying attention and I was doing, not to that extent, and certainly not on social media. A lot of people don't even know I have anything wrong because I don't share it out there. But whenever my husband would say, you should try CrossFit. Are you kidding me? I have Hashimoto's. I'm not going to do that. I'll break a joint or something. He's like, that's crazy. We should go hiking. I'm like, well, my joints hurt really bad because I'm having a Hashimoto's flare. Everything. I was like, what in the heck?
Yeah.
And so she brought to my attention something that I was doing to myself.
Yeah.
I snapped my fingers and I'm like, I'm done. Yeah. I'm done being that sick person. So I think, don't you think it takes something like that? Like your moment?
Yeah, and it's just, they have to come to that themselves. Like we can't do that for them, but it's just starting to plant those little seeds to make them realize they have a choice. And once they realize, like, it has to be their own journey. Like there really isn't like a tool to like make them change their mind.
Right.
But we just have to point out some of their language like I hear you saying this. I had one client, oh, it was so good. She had a lot of stuff going on. A very young woman, cancer, lots of cancer, and just a lot of stuff going on. Very well versed in alternative health. I mean, she was doing everything right. I mean, she had this amazing diet, traveling all over the world to see the top-notch doctors. And she said to me, she said, well, I know, we were talking about food, and she's like, well, I know that if I can just go 80% raw, I know I'll heal. And she's like, but it's just so hard. I just can't do it. And I was like, all right, I'm going to point it out. I'm going to call you out on this because you just said it. I said, you just made this belief system that you're going to heal if you can do this, but you can't do it. So you've like just put yourself in this, right in between this rock and a hard place, where you put yourself in this box saying, I'm only going to heal if this and this and this are all lined up.
Yes.
And I can't do it. So I said, you have to take the box out. You can't say like, I'm only going to heal if I'm 80% raw, or if whatever it is. It could be anything. I'm only going to heal if I can deal with this, or my diet's this way, or if I never eat gluten again, or whatever. And then, because then like if you're putting yourself in these little boxes of like, and then you just can't get out of them, because it was just, so it's just these little things. If we can pick up on their language, and realize, okay, they're living in this belief system that they really are sick and there's nothing you can do. And, so because if you believe there's nothing you can do to heal, like, then you're never going to heal. If you believe you're sick, you're never going to be well. If you believe that you're not enough, you're never going to be enough, So it's just kind of being aware, picking up on language, and just dropping little hints here and there to help them start to realize like, oh, okay, my language, is really limiting. And, helping them remove those boxes and realize that they can heal under any circumstances, and trusting their body. And it's really empowering to feel that way, because when you put yourself in a box like that, it's just, you give all your power away. And it's, I think about her, like, if I felt like I couldn't heal from cancer unless I was 80% raw, and there's no way I can do that, like, that's totally disempowering
and stressful. Oh my gosh.
All your power is gone, and so it's getting it back. Like, you've got the power, you can do this,
Right. Yeah.
And modeling some of that positive language for them. So
yeah, there's an exercise that I talk about in my course, and we have a 14-page intake form that we use with clients, and it's very high mileage, cover just about dang near everything. Mm-hmm. But in that, what I do is what I used to do with my clients, they would fill it out, and I would be either on a screen like this, or we'd face to face, and I would tell them either get a red pen or a highlighter, something that we can circle or highlight specific words, and we're going to go through the form together, just the first couple of pages, and we're going to do a little exercise. And like, okay. And then I would say, okay, so highlight these words, and I would be like, anything that was negative at all: don't, can't, hurts, pain, hopeless, sad, frustrated. Any word that did not have a positive power to it or a positive energy to it, I had them mark it. Mm-hmm. And then when we went back and we finished a couple of pages of doing that, we went back and looked at it, and I said, is there a pattern here? Right? What do you see about what you said? These are your answers in your intake form. What do you see? And she's like, I look like the most, this is my most recent, I look like the most miserable person in the world. And I said, well, that's the story you're telling yourself. Yeah. So what we're going to do through this process is shift that language. Yeah. But I just think it's such an unconscious thing. Mm-hmm. I even get my kid, I pull it. I know you do this with your children too. I try to teach him present moment living, meditation, all of that. But I also try to, to say to him, turn it around. Like Byron Katie says, yeah. Who would you be without this story? Yeah. Which I think is, do you practice, do you read Byron Katie?
I just start to give them these little questions like, what would you be doing today if you didn't have, this issue or whatever it is, what would your life look like? And just to it's kind of fun for them to like, oh, well, I would be traveling and I would be, doing all these things. And it's like, okay, like that's what I want you to start doing. And maybe you're not traveling or starting a business yet, but what can you do today that kind of looks like that? That's a little bit fun. Can you take a quick road trip? Can you go to lunch with a friend? Can you just these little things where we start to add in that fun? And I know you talk about that too, but adding in that joy. Yeah. If you don't have that, it's really hard to create health. And so, so it's just like, well, let's start exploring this a little bit. Like, what do you really want? Why do you want to get healthy? There's a reason why they're on this journey, because they don't want to feel like crap, because there's something else they want to do.
Yeah.
Identify what you really want to do with your life, and then just start making these little tiny action steps. And, it doesn't have to be big things. It can be little things, but just creating joy in their everyday life. It's so important. And
It is.
we just forget.
We do. And I remember being at a bookstore back when there were bookstores, like all the bookstores are going away, which just makes me so sad. But I used to go when my son was was a baby, and my mother-in-law would come. I'd go to either Target. Of course, we've all done the Target walk, right? With our Starbucks coffee. And I'd go to the bookstore and I would look I was in my research phase. Why do I still have back pain? Why are my feet still hurting? Why do my joints hurt? I was still undiagnosed from Hashimoto's at the time. And I came across this book, and it said, it was called Healing Your Back Pain, something by John Sarno, Dr. Sarno. Do you know of Dr. Sarno?
I don't know.
Oh my gosh, he's amazing resource. Now my son's 11, so this was 9 years ago. Uh-huh. And so I went home and looked it up, because that's what you do. You find the books you want, and then you buy them on Amazon, right?
Yeah.
And I got this book called The Divided Mind. That book alone, I sat down that night and read that book, and my back pain was gone the next day. Because what he talks about is the psychosomatic connection between your thoughts and your physical body. It's a real pain. It's a real feeling. It's a real problem. But if we feed that, and this is, I'm paraphrasing here, but we feed that belief, then our body hangs on to it. And so he even recommends, like, once you rule out anything serious, right? Like, if that's what you got to do, rule it out. Like, did you injure your back? Did you have a car wreck? No. Did you lift something heavy? No. Well, why does your back hurt? Backs don't just hurt, right? It's really a distraction for the mind, not to deal with the emotions that are under the surface waiting for us. Mm-hmm. And so once I read that, and I understood that there was nothing physically or physiologically wrong with me, and that I was no longer going to cater to that problem, it was gone, literally overnight gone. Mm-hmm. And so that is one book that always sticks with me, that we feed into that belief that something is wrong with us by going to doctors, by chasing this diagnosis and symptoms with labs and all of these things, and we create that sickness around us, right? Yeah. He's amazing. He's like I think he's in his 80s now. I tried to get an appointment with him back then because I wanted to tap into his brain a little bit, just to learn more about the psychosomatic stuff.
Yeah.
But he doesn't even talk to people anymore. Like,
oh, bummer.
I know he's earned the right to retire, though. He's been practicing this mind-body medicine for longer than anyone has, really. Mm-hmm. He's like the pioneer of it. It's fascinating.
I'll have to check that out. Yeah. I mean, it's, I tell people, like, rather than looking at your symptoms as something wrong, like, look at it as a messaging system. Like, it's your body speaking to you. This is the way that your body speaks to you. And it's telling you that something's off and something needs a little bit of an adjustment. And if that's diet, great. But sometimes it's stress, and it's our thoughts and our belief systems and our emotions, and whatever it is, it's just our body's way of communicating. So it doesn't mean that, like, anything's wrong with you. It just means that your body's highly intelligent and knows exactly what it's doing,
Yes.
And so to love your body and to be grateful for those symptoms, because then, okay, it's like, all right, I need to do a little bit better. It's just our body constantly guiding us. And it's when we try to suppress everything, that's just when it gets worse and worse and worse.
Yeah. And isn't there, I think there's this stigma around feeling unhappy or feeling sad or bad. Like, what's so wrong with that? That's a message from somewhere that's saying, you can't be on all the time. Like, no one's running around happy with rainbows all the time. Sadness is an emotion, in my opinion, for a reason. And so by trying to give people antidepressants and trying to suppress make it go away and stop, we're ignoring those signals you're talking about.
Right.
Like those.
Right. Absolutely. Thoughts. And that's where, things like EFT or the emotion code, that's where we can just dig in and release some of that. Because that's what the body's saying is, I've got this stuff that I need to deal with. Like, I want it acknowledged. I want to validate what I've been feeling. And then once it is, then it goes, So yeah, it's just about not suppressing, like helping them realize that they're okay, that they're safe, that they're not broken. And that's from that place, when you can really have that solid foundation, that's when the health can just flourish from there. So
right. And you don't have to have any super special skills as a coach to be able to help someone tap into their own selves. I mean, it's truly about their instincts and their intuition anyway. We're just helping them to find that place that, and I talk about this poem all the time, but it is so powerful to me, by Shel Silverstein. Have you heard it? You know, that kid's author, have you heard it? It's called The Voice.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do.
Yeah. And so I love that poem, and it's been in the back of my mind for like 20 years. So I got my niece a book one time, and I was like, I love that. That speaks to me, like that little voice inside of you that whispers all day long. I know that this is right for me. I feel that this is wrong. Right. But what do? We just shut the voice up. So,
exactly.
but yeah, so let me read this real quick. Just in the notes here on our chat, Mary Louise says, I'm so relating to this, years of therapy, and that's exactly how I felt. Talking about crap all the time and not getting rid of it. And the idea of just deciding to feel better can definitely work, and it did for me. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Janice says, believing for healing was what finally healed my daughter of chronic Lyme. This is the missing piece for healing. Yeah, it doesn't really matter what the problem is, right? I mean, cancer, Lyme, does not matter. I mean, the story that you tell yourself is the important piece, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Janice is asking, how does the emotion code work? Like, what do you do? What's the process? Like with Reiki, we know that there's a lot of, well, we don't all know that, but I've had it, and it's powerful. You can feel things leaving your body, and they do hand motions over you. What does the emotion code look like?
So there are some blog posts on my website that have a video that explains it more in depth. But I use muscle testing to identify the emotion. So I have charts in front of me with different things to test. So I'll muscle test, and if somebody comes to me and says, I have hip pain, then I would be really specific and add muscle testing and asking, is there a trapped emotion that's directly contributing to this hip pain? Then I would get a yes, then we would find it and I release that, and then we just move on to the next one. So in a session, I'll clear from anywhere from like 15 to 20 emotions. And then there's lots of other stuff that goes into it. I do negative belief system work and things like that to help people shift these, these emotions and these belief systems. But it's really simple. It's just, really the main way is through muscle testing, through identifying, which can be done at a distance. I don't see any of my clients in person anymore. So that's, you just identify it, and then through some just intention and different things, we release it, then muscle test and make sure it's gone and move on to the next one. So
how do you do that by distance? I have a Reiki practitioner that does it by distance, and I know how that works to an extent, but how do you do that by distance without seeing the person? Kathy says my feet hurt. How do you do that? Yeah. Without seeing like the muscle testing part. Usually isn't muscle testing with resistance, right?
Yeah, but I can do it on myself. So the way that I do it is like I do the finger length.
Okay. Yep.
And so what I do, and that's what I was in my training, I was taught how to do it at a distance where, so if I was going to test, I'll just do my husband because I know I have his permission. So if I want to test him, he works from home, he's downstairs, but I would just say, okay, can I, is Rhett testable? Yes. Can I test for him now? Yes. And then I just kind of take a minute to like connect up to him. Okay, so now when I say my name is Rhett, then it's strong. So that way I know that I'm testing for him now. So if I were going to ask a question, like, do I have a trapped emotion that's ready to be cleared? If I got a yes or no, that would be for him. So all the work that I'm doing, I do for him. And then at the end of the session, I just kind of, again, set that intention. All right, I'm now releasing, I'm disconnecting from Rhett. And then now I'm back to Megan. So my name's Megan. And when I say my name's Rhett, it's not. So it's muscle testing. I have a blog post on my website that explains all of it. I have a webinar training about muscle testing. It's an amazing tool. But yeah, it's just a great way to like get answers straight from the body, straight from the subconscious to see what's going on. And that's where, if I've got somebody with anxiety, it's like, all right, let's look at everything. Do we have any nutritional deficiencies? Do we have the trapped emotions? And in that way, through muscle testing, we can just get really clear answers. So
yeah, so it's not very similar, but kind of along the same lines of pendulum work. Like if I'm ever confused about something, or like when I had to put my cat to sleep or my dog to sleep, and I was like, is it time? I don't know. I can't make this decision. So I would do some pendulum work on that.
Yeah.
And it brought me great clarity. I mean, it was every single time. And isn't it interesting? Have you ever done pendulum work? Yeah. Isn't it interesting how people who are skeptical and, like whatever, like my husband, whatever, he can't make it move. But my son, he was like, oh, I love that. And he was able to administer it with, he and I could do it all day long. And my husband's just like closed minded. I'm like, you're not open to it. That's why it's not working for you.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, and that's what it is. It's just getting those yes or no answers,
Yep.
and we're just doing it. It's just really specific to emotions and releasing emotions. So
Awesome.
yeah.
Okay. So tell us a little bit more about where people can find you and what maybe that tools that you have available on your website that coaches can, like you and I were talking about. You were saying it would be something for their clients as well. But also, I think that once we're done with this call, when I get on the boards and stuff, and I do get a lot of messages after calls, people are like, oh my gosh, like that's something I think, I want to learn more about. Where can they go and what can they look for?
So my website is harmony-restored.com. I'm on social media. I have a private Facebook group, which I can send the link to. That's kind of like where I'm at the most, where people can ask questions. And you can kind of get a feel there for like, how I interact with my clients and how I present this to them. I have a blog, so that has a lot of information. I have a couple ebooks. One is called The Handbook for Healing, and that's just really simplifying everything that I did to heal. So it's about eating real food, but it's also about mindset and all of that. But it's really, really simple. So very bite-sized pieces, because I know for our clients, it's hard to take too much in. So I try to keep everything really simple. I have another ebook about anxiety specifically, which outlines everything I did, which includes, diet and movement and things, but also the mindset, the changing the belief systems, all of that stuff is outlined to heal anxiety and stress. And then, I just have some webinar trainings that I started. So I have one about healing anxiety, one about muscle testing. I'm doing one in December about healing emotional eating and like making peace with food. And so there's lots of good stuff on there. I'm happy to ask questions or answer questions. I'm pretty available. So.
Okay. So with your webinar on the emotional eating, make sure you send me that information, because there are coaches out there. I have another group that, has got over 1,700 coaches, and that emotional eating comes up all the time where they're like, what do you think's going on here? Or, and in fact, a client of mine that I'm mentoring right now, I have a mentoring program. She's redoing her website, and she has this picture before and after, because she does personal training. Then she's also doing like functional diagnostic nutrition coaching. And so I was like kind of critiquing the website a little bit just by looking at and saying of ease of use and things. I said, there's a picture down here at the bottom I kind of want to bring to your attention. And it was a woman in her 50s who looks amazing in the left-hand side picture, which was her before picture. Like, I was like, oh, look like that at 45, right? And then the picture next to it was the same woman doing the same pull-up, right? The same motion. And she looked like she had been anorexia had set in over the last couple of months. And I said, I just have to bring this to your attention, that this is not appealing. Like, if you're trying to bring clients into your business right now, like this, to me, if a woman sees this and thinks that that's what she's supposed to look like, that's a turnoff. And I said, does she have any emotional eating stuff going on? She goes, I can't believe you just said that. She said, I don't know why I missed that, because she'd been watching this girl and all she eats is like a bite of cheese after she works out, things like that. Right.
Yeah.
So she said, how do I even begin to talk to someone about that? Like, she has no idea. It's a whole new world opened up for her.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is I like to give people like real tools to use.
Yes.
To actually deal with this stuff, because it's such an issue. And that's the huge thing I see all the time is people that are alternative minded. It's stress about food. It's so much stress about food, and making peace with that is something I'm really passionate about. And I like to give people, tools to deal with that, and so yeah, I can definitely send you the info.
Yeah. I think that, I think we would have some coaches and some, other people from my other groups signing up for something like that. It's a big topic. Yeah. Orthorexia. I mean, that, people don't understand how anorexia, obviously one disease, but orthorexia is never talked about, how we can become so super focused and obsessed with what we're putting in our mouth that we're not living our lives anymore.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I was there for years, and that's when I was when my diet was the best, I was at absolute rock bottom,
Me too.
Yeah.
Yes.
So when I have more leniency and I just live my life and I go out to lunch with a friend, like I feel so much better.
Yep.
It's just amazing, like so much focus on food. And I have this blog post that talks about why joy is more important than food, and it's really like that's what's missing. It's not a supplement. It's not, you're not like need to cut something else out. You need to add in joy.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that also because I love like salads and soups, and I love all of those healing traditional foods that I eat. But I was literally eating homemade miso the other morning for breakfast in a big salad. It was my breakfast on Saturday morning, and my husband comes in. He's got a big old we're totally gluten free here, but it was a gluten free bologna egg sandwich, like this big, and he's a big dude, right? And I was like, how are you not sick with autoimmunity, with no autoimmune antibodies at all? I have autoimmunity and I'm eating like this. He goes, there ain't no joy in salad for breakfast. I'm like, well, I like it. And he's like, you need a bologna sandwich.
Sometimes you really do. And people don't want to hear that, but I'm sorry.
I know. Now I do branch out at night, but it was just funny because I was looking at him. I'm like, how is this even possible that I live this way and you live like that, right?
It's all in his head.
It's all in the head. But anyway, but I just want to say thank you so much for being with us. It's just really perfect timing again. And, as we're heading into group coaching too, this could be a really powerful tool also to throw on the back end and teach them about bringing this to their group coaching sessions as well. It's another tool for the toolbox.
Yep, another tool, lots of tools.
Yep. Well, I'm very honored that you spent time with us today, and I will look for more information from you, and I'm sure we'll be talking because we kind of seem to speak the same language.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Have a good rest of the day and a happy Thanksgiving.
Yes, happy Thanksgiving.
All right. Bye, everybody. See you guys tomorrow.